In order to take the harmonic balancer off or the timing cover off, being that there's no engine mount here, the oil pan shares a gasket with the timing cover, so I had to loosen up the oil pan down a little bit so I can get the timing cover off. So in order to take the weight off of that, because I had the jack underneath there holding the engine up because there's no engine mount over here, I hooked a chain up to that engine mount bracket to the crossbar, and then I ran a pry bar over to that mount, and then I suspended the engine off of that. You'll see the CV axle is not sitting on the frame, so I don't have to worry about hurting that. That allowed me to get the harmonic balancer off and then the timing cover off, and we can now see the broken magnet, wherever I can see it. Right there is why we have a cam code. I can show you what that piece is supposed to look like. Give me a second. I just set the new one right next to the broken one there, and you can see there's a pretty good difference there. Let me flip it back around. That's what it's supposed to look like. Well, I'm in here working on getting the harmonic balancer off. One reason why we're going to be putting a new harmonic balancer on here is if you look in there, you'll see these cracks opening up. Let me see if I can't zoom you in. Quite a few cracks on this thing. Kind of hard to get it to budge to show you the cracks opening and closing on it because it's so cold, but yeah, this rubber is getting pretty badly dry rotted in here, so we're going to replace that. Doesn't have any fancy bolts in it. It's just a standard right-hand thread, 15/16 or 24 millimeter. I had to heat this one up with a propane torch to expand the bolt so I could actually get it to come loose. Then I got a puller on here. Gonna try and get it off. Okay, I got the harmonic balancer off. Just a tip, if you're reusing these, make sure you double check any of these fins and make sure none of them are bent. It's a bit of a tight frame between the body and the frame. Once you get the harmonic balancer off, this piece just clicks off. It's got little retaining clips, pulls off. I'm going to leave this off on this car. This doesn't really do much except keep some oil from splashing on your belt. Another thing I did is I got measurements between this crankshaft and the sensor right there, so I can put the new one in the same location. So when I go to put the new sensor in, I can slide it in place and get my measurements. There's a bolt in the bottom here you loosen up, and that loosens this clamp. Make sure you don't over tighten that bolt if you're replacing that crank sensor, because it can crack this aluminum. And unfortunately, I can't slide this off at the moment like I wanted to because it's got a dowel pin right here behind this bolt. So I'll have to take that off when I get the timing cover off. While I'm in here, I'm going to take some sensors out. So up in the back, there's a oil pressure sensor, a knock sensor, and then a cam sensor. I'll go on top and I'll take those out quick because they're easy to get at right now. And then it's less stuff hanging off of it to hold you up pulling the timing cover out. Okay, the cam sensor has just a 10 millimeter bolt holding it in. I already have that taken out, and then that slides out. It's just got sealed with no ring. The oil pressure sensor is right here above the CV axle, passenger side. I already loosened them up ahead of time, and then the knock sensor is right here on the block. Get that out of the way. And then I'll start taking out some bolts. You might want to take note before you go taking these studs out that 3 of these nuts that hold the timing cover have these clips for that one plastic cover on it that I took off. You want to take note of where these studs are at. So there's one right there underneath the cam sensor, and then there's 2 over here that hold the other side of that plastic cover, in case you're wondering where those bolts went off to. So I'm going to get this timing cover off camera and continue from there. Well, you know what's really funny is you know you have an old car when your parts come in old boxes. Anyway, we got some notes in here. This got a new oil pump on it. So just for in case anyone was wondering, there's two style of springs and valves. This one being a 92 has no hole in it, and it has the 24 coil spring. And this says to submerge the oil pump in clear oil and remove by hand before installing it in the engine. That's one way to prime the oil pump on these, but the repair manual actually says to stuff the whole oil pump assembly with Vaseline, which is the direction I'm going to go with this. I'm also going to pre-fill the oil filter when I go to put it onto the engine. Now this oil pump wasn't necessarily bad, but I was in here, I just changed it so I know it wouldn't be a problem. There is a taper or a step on one side of this pump. It's flat on the other. So that taper is going to go towards the inside of the pan, so it'll go onto the crankshaft a little easier. You replace that plate with the oil pump. And when you take this filter adapter off, there's a spring right here, and then the piston is over here. This is just what leaks around that piston will just go back into the sump. And then when that spring gets depressed by pressure, it bleeds back into the negative pressure side of the pump. So the piston and spring are going to sit in here like that. And it sits flush with the end of this casting once you bolt this cover on. And then the oil pressure pushes it back. So make sure you put that in the correct direction. And another thing you're going to notice is that's actually pitted from the coolant. The amount of sanding is going to get that flat again, so we are going to need to RTV this when we go to put it onto the car. And something I had to do is, for the one heater hose pipe here, I actually had to come in here with a rat tail file and clean all the corrosion out that was in there, and then finished cleaning it up with the gun brush. So cleaned all that out, so that's all nice and smooth. There's no rough edges there. There's a crossover pipe that hooks up here. This was all corroded. I wire wheeled that, and as well as the upper radiator hose connection, or is that the lower? Whatever. I cleaned all the corrosion off of this so that the rubber hose seals onto that correctly, and cleaned all the gaskets up. I'm not worried about the sludge. That sludge isn't going to hurt anything. I wiped up the loose stuff up with a rag. Also cleaned the bottom of that all up. So that's ready to go into the car. Well, I got the timing set all put together. See if I can't zoom you in a little bit, but you can see the timing marks are in line. The chain gears are brand new. The tensioner has Loctite on it. That's been tightened up. Cam bolt has been tightened up to spec. Now I can't really video this underneath the car too well, so I'm going to do it right up here. In order to get the oil pan on and off, you're going to have to take the torque converter cover off. There's one screw here that you can get in from the side. And there's two screws down here. And these are a sheet metal type of screw. There's three of them. Hold that plastic piece on. Once you get that off, you can start taking all these 10 millimeters out. But on this side, there's two 11 millimeters. Slightly different size bolt and thread. They go right here. And then most of these 10 millimeters have a larger flange, like this. Then the three that go into the timing cover have smaller flanges right here. So just thought I'd show you where those all go out. I already cleaned, don't mind that. I already cleaned all the oil off all the bolts. Torque spec is between 120 and 125 inch-pounds on these bolts. So I'm going to go put this on loosely. I'm going to leave it down. I'm going to just start the threads a couple turns and then leave it down until I get the timing cover on. I'm going to start putting the timing cover on off camera, and I'll post more as I go on another day, so thanks for watching. Make sure you give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and have a good day. Bye.